And welcome to another edition of the Nerdy Agent Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Pedersen, with my one brother and fellow nerd, Josh. AJ is at the cabin.
Yeah,
He's driving
kind of lives there now.
He lives in the cabin now for the month of August, I think.
We'll see if we get a special guest, AJ Pedersen, on the podcast.
Yeah, I think in a couple weeks we might be able to get back on here. But it's just the two of us, and so I'm feeling very out of the shot because the camera is very wide angle.
We have a different setup today, too.
Different setup. Everything's different. We're still working on the studio. But today we're going to do, with just the two of us, we're going to go heavy hitter, quick hitter, talking about inspections, giving your clients an idea of what to expect, and some of the scripts that we go through, as well as the process, in order to make sure they have a good understanding of what's going to happen that day of the inspection and that period in general. To start, do you want to just start at the beginning?
Yeah, I was going to even say, like,
of
as
setting
the first thing I set from an expectation standpoint for inspections at the buyer meeting. I let every buyer that I work with know that I think inspections are extremely important, especially when you're talking to first-time home buyers. It's a big piece of the puzzle in terms of them feeling very comfortable with things going forward. I tell them I'll never advocate that they waive an inspection, even though a lot of people are doing so or had been doing so in the market today. I'll never advocate for that. So if you ask me, should I waive an inspection, I'm always going to say no. I tell them it's important to have an inspection for 3 different reasons. The first and foremost is that there are certain things that I cannot inspect when I'm walking through a house. So I tell them I can call out 80-90% of the stuff an inspector should call out, but I can't stick my head in the sewer line. I can't smell radon gas. So those things are things that are going to be outside the scope of what I can even provide for you when I'm showing a house. Secondarily, I think it's really important to have an inspection to ensure that, big ticket items, things like that, are just all okay. But the other primary reason is when you're moving into a house for the first time, there's going to be stuff. So even if I walk through a showing and I'm pointing out all the little things that you're going to have to take care of in the first few years, having an actual inspection report that says, here are all of the things that you're going to have to do at this house is really important for you to just have as a reference after you move into the house. It's almost like your owner's manual of, like, in the first 3 years, these things are going to have to get done. So I like as a honey-do list for new homeowners.
We talk a lot about buyer meetings with first-time home buyers specifically, but the expectations that you can set when you sit down with somebody for that first meeting are extremely important. And this is just a sidebar on top of the inspections, but it's like I lay out everything to expect for the entire process. We harp on our agents so hard to get those buyer meetings. So if you are an agent out there right now that isn't doing that as the first step and you're just going and starting showing houses, try setting a buyer meeting and explaining the process, and then see how different the experience is for your clients, because it makes a big difference. The only other thing at the inspections or at the buyer meeting that we typically talk about is going to be just understanding and making sure they know that it is going to be the worst day and the worst week of the entire transaction. When you phrase it like that, and I even tell them, I say, if you expect it to be the worst day, it's going to be a little bit easier. But if you expect it to be easy, it's going to be terrible, and you're going to be super stressed out the entire time.
And I almost feel bad because I feel like we harp on it there and then again, all the time again. And it's like, I'm not doing that to try to make it so that you're not actually intimidated by the results of the inspection. Yeah. I just want to prepare you, right? Mm-hmm. So part of the buyer meeting, and I was talking to another one of our agents yesterday, he's like, things are so much easier when I have a buyer meeting first. And I said the reason for it being important is because every time that I sit down with somebody, I want to first prepare them for everything that is to come so that they know what to expect. I tell them, I never want you to get to a point where you have something that's going to be happening, but you don't know what to expect. So if I can prepare you from the start and just be proactive with all that communication, it ensures that when we finally get to the point of the inspection, they go, this day's going to be not that fun. Because they're going to look at my house and they're telling me everything that's wrong with the house that I'm in love with. And if I repeat that 3 times, then when they get to that point, then it's like, okay, this actually is a big deal. This actually isn't as big of a deal, but I now know kind of what to expect going into that.
And like you said, it's really just about the experience. That's all the expectations are. And that's why that meeting in general is just so important, to make sure you can control that experience to make it as good as possible.
Absolutely.
So the second thing I would say from an inspection perspective is actually nothing to do with setting an expectation for the inspection, nothing to do with reviewing the report, any of that. It's actually the showing itself.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of agents that don't spend the time at a house that your client really likes. And I'm not advocating for doing this at every single house. I mean, you definitely should be pointing out all of the issues in every single house. But if you walk into a house and it's like, my buyers don't like this house, we don't need to point out the leaking water or all of this, because we're not going to buy that house anyways.
But you should still,
you should still, you can, right? Yeah. You certainly should. However, The second you see your buyer's eyes light up,
Yep.
it's like, this is a house that they might like. That's the second you start tearing it apart.
It's like the opposite of a normal sales job.
Correct. You find every potential issue. And again, you're not trying to do anything other than making sure they understand what they're getting into, because your buyers are always better off knowing that stuff before they decide to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
One, because then the inspection is a little bit easier. But then two, if one of those things that you point out ends up being a deal breaker, you just save them like $1,000.
Yep.
Because the inspection's going to come out and they're going to find it anyways. And then they're just going to cancel the PA, and then you're back at square one minus $1,000.
I think it's like I mentioned, it's different than a normal, like what we call a sales job, right? And I like the reason we're called, I like that we're called the advisory, because we're not salespeople, we're advisors. If you're at a car dealership and you're like, ooh, I'm starting to like this car, and they can see like I like the car, they like try to like sell you the 100%, right? They're trying to convince you to buy it. I do the opposite, where it's like, to your point, if they really start to like something, I'm like, I want you to know everything that's wrong with it, so that if you still like it, even after knowing everything that's wrong with it, then you know you want it, right? And so it's a good way to ensure that people understand that through this process, when they actually get to the point of buying a house, they really want to. And I think you see that play out with some agents versus other agents in terms of what cancellation rates look like. We track all of that with our team. We coach all of that when we have agents that start to have higher cancellation rates. I haven't had a cancellation in couple years, I don't think, mostly because of the fact that I feel like I'm very stringent upon knowing that they are going to want to buy the house if they get to the point of this part of the process.
Not to mention, and it may seem backwards, and there's just a lot of agents that look for low hanging fruit. It's like, I want to sell this house because then paycheck.
Chasing dollars.
Your business long term, if your goal is to have a career in real estate, you're gonna get so many more referrals when your buyer looks at you and goes, I love this house, and you go, all right, let's find every issue with it and see if you still want it. Because they're going to look at you and go, that's not what I expected.
Yep.
Wow, you actually care about me. You actually care about getting me a good product.
Yep.
And helping me through this journey versus just trying to get me to buy whatever. And that person then is going to want their friends and family to work with you, because they're going to feel like they're going to have a better experience. They're going to get a better house and not have as many issues later on.
100%.
So the what's the next step in the process? I say,
yeah. So let's say we get, let's say
we're under contract.
We're under contract. So I do two things before the inspection. I actually have an inspection this afternoon. So the first thing I did was 2 days ago, I actually sent them a past inspection report. If you're not doing this, hugely important to do this, because what you're doing is essentially setting expectations for what they can expect. Because I tell people they need to be at the inspection too, right? You're not just going to get a report and review it and then we talk about it. You want to be at the inspection. You want to learn more about the house from the inspector, who's an expert on this stuff.
This is super important because the inspection reports in and of themselves and how they're worded, which is understandable how the inspectors word them that way, they're a little bit more intense sometimes than what it actually is.
Well, inspector is doing their job, but they're also protecting themselves. If they don't find something, or they say something's not a big deal and it becomes a big deal, it's a liability issue for them. So the reports are always going to be worded a little bit scarier than the reality. And there are some issues that are a big issue, and there are some issues that are not as big of an issue, but there will be things on that report.
Not to mention, it's kind of nice to go back and hang out in the house for 2 hours.
It is.
That you're about to buy.
But I say, I want you to have an understanding of, this is an inspection report from a client that actually bought this house. Just want to let you know, this is a pretty standard report that you might expect to see. If it's way worse than this, it's possible, but for the most part, you're probably expecting something similar to this. So read through it. Let me know what questions you have, but just to get you in the mindset of what you can expect from a report standpoint. I also then send a text message the day of, just saying, essentially, here are your options through the process. Just a reminder, this is going to be a little bit less fun. Someone's going to tear your house apart, but we have options. So you have flexibility through this process to make certain decisions if you're not happy, and or you have flexibility to move forward with the transaction and or ask for things if there are things that need to be fixed. That's kind of the next big 2 steps. I mean, there's a lot of nuanced stuff to it.
If you're listening to this and you're wondering what that text message is, shoot us a DM anywhere. Instagram, text us, email us. We will get you that template if you're interested in it, just as a sidebar. The next step, I tell people, and it depends on agents and how busy they are, but I also usually suggest, especially newer agents, show up to inspections, at least for...
I show up to every inspection.
30 minutes to an hour. I show up for 30 minutes to an hour on every inspection. If I can, I'm there longer.
I'm missing the advisory boat tour today. So
there you go. But I would say, especially new agents, should be there because the information you're going to learn is invaluable. And it can be another way to check yourself, right? Like you go throughout the house as a new agent and go, well, I found this, this, and this. What did the inspector find that I didn't find?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I find that next time? Because again, it's not just about showing a buyer all of the issues and being able to do that, but it's learning the product and it's understanding the product and it's being able to talk about the product, because the better you are at that, the more business you're just going to get. I mean, that's just a
100%. Yeah, and I walk into my inspection and I will ask the inspector, okay, walk me through anything that's like more of a big deal. Like that's what I want to hear about first. And so he'll then talk to them about the stuff that might be a bigger deal. Or,
Yeah.
oh no, everything actually looks pretty good, but there's some stuff here. We'll walk through the report. But like, it's more, is there anything that's a more of a major issue is kind of the first thing I say. I show up like an hour and a half after he starts most times. But having that conversation allows me to kind of prepare, because then I'll also ask for more detail on it, because the other key component to inspection is the fact that you get to negotiate through this process. And negotiation is a key way for you to add value for your clients, especially when you're going through this inspection process. And so having an understanding of what actually the inspector is saying is really important versus like, I got a report, roof had a couple dings on it, so I'm going to send over and ask for $1,000 for the, like, if you don't understand what the actual problem is, negotiating on behalf of your clients is very tricky to do.
Exactly. And so explain then after the inspection,
Yep.
what's that? You have that email that you typically work through.
I do. So I will send my clients an overview of every single thing that happened on the inspection. So I'll take that report, I'll go through it line by line by line, and it's broken down into key buckets. One is like major issues / ask for. The next one is fix yourself first. The next one is fix yourself later, and then it's keep an eye on. So I break it down into those different buckets so they can have a prioritization of the different things from my side of things. It allows them to kind of look at that honeydew list and say, where should I start, and kind of work through this. But like things like light bulbs or smoke detectors, I'll put that in like the fix yourself first bucket because they're not that hard to do. Grading would usually go into that category. But like if the roof has got a puncture in it, that's a major issue. Or if the sewer line is bad, that would be in a ask for major issue. I'll also say, if you're going through the inspection process, understanding your leverage points is really important from an agent standpoint. For example, I use this story a lot. Like I have a client who bought a house in December where the only offer had been on the market for 2 weeks. And we went to the inspection and it was solid. Like nothing was really wrong. He's like, all right, great, I'm good. Let's move forward. And I said, well, that's fine, but you also have leverage at this point in the process to ask for things. The seller does not want you to back out of this transaction. So I will come to you and say, hey, why don't we say the roof wasn't brand new. You would have had to probably do something with it at some point in the future. I had a couple pictures of spots where it wasn't in perfect shape. I'll ask for $4,000 for you for the roof, because you'll probably need that money at some point anyways. And why don't we use our leverage to try to get something out of this inspection?
And it's really important to explain to your clients, because people don't know this when I tell them.
Yep.
The sellers cannot cancel during the inspection period.
But you can.
They can only say no.
Yep.
But so if you ask for people, because that used to be the case though. There was an option back when if you asked for something that the deal could fall apart. Mm-hmm. Now you can ask for $4,000, and if they say yes, you get it. If they say no, you can just proceed as is.
There's no risk to asking for something.
No, other than them saying no.
And because you have the leverage, and because now a set amount of time has passed, there's a reason to make that ask.
100%.
Even a couple weeks ago, my last inspection prior to this, we had a $5,000 material defect clause, but through the negotiation of the actual contract itself, I got the sense that we still were maybe $5,000 better than the next best offer. The roof was old and it did have a couple spots on it. And so I asked for $5,000 and we got $5,000 through the process, even with that material defect clause, because that cost was legitimate. But it was, it's one of those things where you go through it and you go, I need to understand where my points of leverage are through this process at this point in time, and make those asks, and also then communicate to my buyers why we're thinking about what we're doing and how we then set those asks up.
And on the flip side, you have to understand when you don't have leverage.
Yep.
And making sure your buyers understand what that looks like. If there was 8 offers on a house and you had an escalation clause $3,000 above the next best offer, and nothing came up.
Yep.
You got to understand that the sellers or even if something does come up.
Yep.
Sellers might be less likely to give you anything for it.
And it goes back to expectation setting. Correct. Throughout the whole process. When you make that offer and before the inspection with that buyer, I'm having a conversation and say, like, if a major thing comes up, we should ask for it. But if nothing major comes up, you're not going to have the flexibility to ask, because through this negotiation on the front end, there's another buyer that's right there waiting for this house. So if you ask, they may be like, kick rocks. I'm going to go with the other buyer.
Well, the first thing the sellers are going to do if you ask is they're
Try
going
to
to call their other buyer
Yep.
and go, how do you feel about this? And then all of a sudden they're negotiating that side too.
Exactly.
And then you just don't know what's going to happen.
So the other thing I'd say is when you think about inspection asks, the other line I give to agents and to buyers is think about it in terms of a negotiation and not, but the biggest mistake I think people make is, well, if I throw out a really big number, then we'll meet somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
I said the odds of your number being 0 get higher the higher your ask is, right? So if you're like, I want $14,000, getting $4,000 is less likely than if you ask for $6,000.
$4,000.
Right. Because the higher number you go, the more you're risking them just being like, just go away. I don't want to deal with this. Like, I'm emotionally upset now. It's not going to happen. It's no different than like when you're offering on the front end. The lower you lowball, the more likely they're just going to tell you to go away. And so I'm always trying to be thoughtful about like, okay, what's our ideal point that we feel comfortable with, right? So I talk to my buyers that say, well, if the inspection, like in terms of like your walk away points, if you were just going to say, I don't want the house anymore, what is the number that you would need to get to feel like you're not going to walk away? You want to keep moving forward. I would align my ask somewhere around that number versus being like, well, if you need 5 to keep moving forward, I'm going to ask for 12 so we can settle at 5. Because if I ask for 12 and then they give you 0, then you might actually walk away because I didn't think this through. But if I ask for 7 and I give a very compelling reason for 7, and they come back at 4 and then we go 5, now everyone is still happy. So you can kind of be thoughtful about how you think through that negotiation strategy piece and ensure that you're not going to create unnecessary emotion through the process, because our job is to limit emotion, not to increase emotion through this.
That's all we have this week on the Nerdy Agent Podcast. And as always, remember, be better.
Bye.